Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are going to be taking a look at the new intro sequence for King of the Hill. Now, having grown up in the '90s, I remember every waiting excitedly every Sunday to turn on Fox and watch animation domination. And you got the staples like Family Guy, The Simpsons. King of the Hill was pretty big at that time too. Lee, were you ever a fan, or did you ever watch King of the Hill growing up?
I've definitely watched my fair share of it. I don't know if I have as many it wasn't something I was a diehard fan of. It was something like, okay, cool. I know all the characters. I think everyone has their own favorites as far as who they like from the cast. But it was never something where I was like, oh, I have to watch this as soon as it comes out type of thing. So very curious. Since it's been so long since the last season, how they kind of I guess what they're planning to do or what they want to do moving forward. So I guess that'll be a very interesting thing to see for here on out.
Yeah, because it ended 12 years ago because it got canceled by Fox. And what made King of the Hill so unique was the fact that it wasn't really goofy like what you would see in The Simpsons or Family Guy. It had its own, its own tone, really. It was very much far more down to earth, which I could appreciate. So when I think it was like 3 years ago, they announced that Hulu was going to revive King of the Hill. I was kind of intrigued because I felt like with the series finale, it kind of told what it needed to tell, So I really wasn't sure what else they could add to it. So I mean, it's not like Futurama where you can kind of keep going back and keep adding more and more stories to it, and it wouldn't seem out of place. Because if you think about it, a show like Futurama has been canceled and revived 3 times now, right? Because first it was Fox, then it was Comedy Central, and now it's Hulu. And Hulu just seems to be on the path of just taking shows that were really, really big way back in the day, and apparently these are Fox shows, I might add, and reviving them. So now we've got King of the Hill. Did you I mean, when you heard the news about them reviving King of the Hill, did you have any hopes or expectations, or was it just like,
no, I was just like, okay, cool. Like, the problem when you have something like this, especially with how many years it's been since it's been out, I mean, you're gonna have an audience, right? You have people that are big fans of it. I'm sure people will watch it. I just don't know, like, you're not gonna get a whole lot of like new people into it, because I mean, here you are, you're in season 14, right? So you're really far along in this, so you're really just kind of hoping that people that liked it before are going to get into it. But I just don't know how many people are going to be like, oh gosh, I have to see what happened with all these characters, because I believe there's been like a time jump, if I recall correctly. I don't remember from the trailer. I think we see adult Bobby and everything like that. So
another
which makes sense.
Well, another thing too, we got to keep in mind is, since the show the show ended, 12 years ago, Brittany Murphy, who played Luann, she's since passed, and so is Tom Petty, who played Lucky, and then a few years ago, Johnny Hardwick, who voiced Still Gribble, he passed away as well. And unfortunately, the guy who voiced John Redcorn, he was unfortunately killed probably like a few weeks ago.
Hasn't even been that long.
I mean, it was pretty recent too. So I want to say
that was just like last. I want to say that was just last week. Am I? Crazy?
Yeah, because they were.
I don't look this up, Luke. This is gonna bother me because I feel like this just happened.
Yeah, because they were presenting it at a festival in Austin, Texas, I think, and then he was shot and killed. So so that's another voice actor that's been lost. And it's kind of interesting too, because John Redcorn does play a huge role in King of the Hill, because obviously he and Nancy are have a thing going on. Then Joseph is their love child as a result. But obviously Dale doesn't.
It was June 1st. It was 6 days ago on time of filming, right?
I mean, well, with animation, it takes an awful long time, because you usually get to record the voices first, then you go in and do the animation after.
Oh, of course, yes.
So yeah, I mean, it is going to be quite interesting how they weave that in. I know Toby Huss, the guy who originally voiced Khan and Cotton and all those other characters, he's been tapped to pick up the slack and carry on as Dale Gribble. But that's going to be kind of interesting to see how what the difference is between Johnny Hardwick's take and Toby Huss's take. It's kind of like when Justin Roiland got booted from Rick and Morty, and they had to bring in replacements. People kept asking, well, what's the difference going to be in voice quality?
Yep.
Because I mean,
up to see.
Because I mean, with Rick and Morty, Justin Roiland was doing both voices, and then he got booted, and then they had to get 2 different actors to do Rick and Morty respectively.
Yep.
But let's go ahead and take a look at this.
Very familiar, right? Oh, interesting. So they moved. Okay. I like how we have this.
Yeah, new guy moves in too.
Oh, they move back. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. There's the lobby. Okay. I think I like how they could I mean, what was that, like 30, 40 seconds, right? Like super quick, but you kind of understand like the passage of time. You see that they left and came back. So interesting to see what made them come back, if they even want to talk about that, or what was the purpose of them moving to begin with.
Well, so I was doing a little bit of reading before this. So apparently in the story, Hank he gets a job in Saudi Arabia where he works with, you'll never believe this, propane. So he and Peggy they moved to Saudi Arabia for some time for work. And then Bobby, obviously he grows up and then he goes and does his own thing. And then after working in Saudi Arabia, Hank and Peggy decide to move back to Arlen where they're retired, and it's kind of like, well, what's happened since we've left, kind of thing. So it is kind of interesting to see, because Hank has always been a bit of an uptight kind of guy. He's always been very, set in his ways. Everything needs to be done this way, can't be done that way. I remember an episode where Peggy and Bobby, tried cooking with charcoal, and Hank flipped out.
Yes.
So it is going to be very interesting just to see how things play out. And I'll say this, what I really, really liked about that is the fact that we actually get to see changes in these time jumps, right?
Yeah.
Because if you remember with Futurama, like the last 2 times they got revived, there were time jumps, but nothing really changed. Fry and Leela and all of the Planet Express employees, they pretty much stayed the same, right? It's like they hadn't aged a day over. Whereas here we clearly see Bobby, he's a lot older, and with Peggy, you can see she looks a little bit older compared to how she was back then. Hank, obviously, I don't know what they did to him in Saudi Arabia, but he doesn't look too different apart from everybody else.
That's the propane for you, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Your skin.
I mean, hey, maybe we should start rubbing propane on our faces. Maybe it's got some sort of anti-aging properties. But
I'll let you start that craze, and I will just see how it all turns out.
Well, Chris has got a propane tank, so maybe he'll be kind enough to oblige. But what do you think about the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like if you're gonna have like some type of like gimmick or an angle to get people interested, like having them kind of grow up, or at least Bobby grow up, does make things more interesting just to see where everybody kind of landed, I guess. So I think that's important when you're setting something we're talking well over a decade since the last season aired. So I think you do have to do something radically different to kind of help bring people in or help bring people back is more likely. Because like you said, with Futurama, it's, this goofy sci-fi thing. So you can just throw people back in. People are not going to bat an eye to it. But for, King of the Hill, a lot more grounded. I think you do have to do something different. So I appreciate that they're not just trying to continue where they left off, because I feel like it would just be very weird and jarring. Obviously, these voice actors and stuff, if you've gotten older, things have changed. Things are going to be different. You're going to sound a little bit different. So I think them going with this different approach is it's at least interesting. I can't say that I'm I can't wait to go see how everything turns out. But it's probably something I would casually watch in the background if there's something else.
I mean, I would watch it just to see how the story stories play out, because obviously the stories that they told 10 years ago aren't necessarily going to be the same thing that they're telling now, right? Now they are doing only 2 seasons of King of the Hill, so we're getting season 14 and 15, and then the rest is TBD. That, I mean, maybe they might carry on, or they might just end it after season 15. Because I mean, like,
I'm sure they'll just wait and see how good the viewership is, and then they'll
Yeah.
decide from there, like any good company does. Like, sure, we'll just wait and see if it's popular. If not, we'll cancel it. If it's still good, then we'll just continue from there.
But I mean, like, with these animation revivals, I mean, you have a little bit more leeway, just because you're not really seeing the actors themselves. It's just hearing their voices while the characters are being portrayed. But at the same time, you kind of have to keep in mind that the stuff that worked, like, 5 or 10 years ago, may not necessarily translate too well in the modern period.
Very true.
Right?
Very true.
Just because because in the original story, we know Dale's very much a big fan of his guns, and he's president of the gun club and everything like that. Obviously, with the stuff that we've seen since then, especially with the rising gun violence, I'm not quite sure how that might translate in popular culture these days. But that's something that will definitely remains to be seen, along with everything else. But let us know down in the comments below what your thoughts are. Are you excited for this revival of King of the Hill? Do you think the stories are going to mesh pretty well as they did 10 years ago? Or do you think they're going to have to change things up a bit in order to make the show more relevant to today's audience? Remember to like. It definitely helps with the algorithm, helps us grow our audience, and subscribe for the latest drops. We are always doing new shows on the channel, and the more subscribers we get, kind of lets us know we're on the right path. But other than that, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Want to come in? Oh, whoops.